From the first prototypes like the brown box to unforgettable classics such as Space Invaders, Pac-Man, and Street Fighter II, follow the evolution of arcades that marked generations and helped shape the video game industry, culminating in the home consoles we have today. Computer Space was conceived by Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dabney in early 1971, when the pair, working under the name Syzygy Engineering, decided to create a coin-op version of the academic game Space War. For the public, the project arose because running Space War on a mini-computer for an arcade was not economically feasible, so Bushnell and Dabney designed dedicated hardware that implemented only that game, an innovative solution for the time. The machine was manufactured and distributed by Nutting Associates. The futuristic style cabinet and simple controls put the player in command of a spaceship facing flying saucers. Commercially, it was an initial success in terms of attention and historical significance, although it received a mixed reception from audiences confused by the novel mechanics, and it is frequently cited as the first commercial video arcade game. Today, surviving units are found in museums and private collections, at auctions or private sales. A well-preserved Computer Space can be worth from several thousand to tens of thousands of dollars, depending on condition and provenance. The so-called brown box was the prototype developed by Ralph H. Baer and his team at Sanders Associates between 1966 to 1967. Baer was an engineer who envisioned the idea of using television for interactive games. The prototype included multiple programs and peripherals, including a light gun, and was eventually licensed to Magnavox, which commercially released it as the Magnavox Odyssey in 1972, a milestone as the first home video game system. Baer worked with electronic techniques typical of TVs of the time, and the games were extremely simple, ping-pong variants, light gun aiming, counters. Today, the brown box and original Odyssey units are museum pieces. Baer is remembered as the father of home video games, and functional Odysseys have collector values that vary greatly depending on condition. Pong was born inside Atari as a training exercise given to Alan Alcorn by Nolan Bushnell. Alcorn designed and implemented the table tennis game in 1972. The prototype was installed in a bar and quickly showed enormous commercial potential. Machines generated significant amounts in coin revenue and transformed Atari's business vision. The game used rotary paddle controls and extremely simple rules, bouncing the ball against the opponent. Pong became a cultural phenomenon, generated a flood of clones, and consolidated the commercial arcade market. Functional original units are collector's items and, depending on condition, can reach significant prices in private sales and auctions. Grand Track 10 was Atari's first major racing experiment, launched in 1974 and developed by Cyan Engineering, an Atari research subsidiary. The game offered a top-down view of the car, steering wheel, pedals, and gearshift. It was notable for using ROMs and custom circuits that simulated a track and checkpoints with a time limit, technical simplicity that was, at the time, advanced technology. Gameplay focused on avoiding obstacles and completing laps, and the machine required fine engineering adjustments, custom chips, and firmware hardware modifications. Today, Grand Track 10 appears in historical collections and museums. Restoring a unit can be complex due to custom parts, raising its value among serious collectors. Breakout was born as a direct evolution of Pong. It was commissioned by Nolan Bushnell and designed by Al Alcorn with contributions from other engineers and some notable involvement from Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak in the background. They played roles in the design and construction of versions. The player controls a bar, paddle, that bounces a ball to break blocks at the top of the screen. The simple yet addictive concept influenced years of brick breaker games. Breakout helped consolidate the idea of reflex and skill-based experiences in arcades, and original machines or later console clone versions are often collectible. Current values depend on rarity and condition. There is also a long lineage of ports and clones on consoles and microcomputers. Space Invaders was created by Tomohiro Nishikado and released by Taito in April 1978. The game introduced the concept of enemy waves with patterns and progressive scoring, as well as a growing sense of threat as the aliens accelerated. The gameplay is simple: move the base horizontally and shoot, but its dynamic acceleration mechanic and level design captivated audiences, leading to massive demand for cabinets. Historical estimates put hundreds of thousands of units produced and installed by the late 1970s, with enormous economic impact for arcades and Taito itself. Space Invaders helped transform arcades into mass entertainment centers and gave rise to countless clones and variations. Today it is an icon whose influence can be seen in innumerable later games. Original machines in good condition are museum and collector items, and auction values vary by rarity. Speed Race, known in some versions as Wheels or with similar titles, was a series of Taito racing arcades that evolved during the 1970s, offering steering wheel, pedal, and sound effects. The goal was to make racing more dynamic with moving obstacles and a sense of speed, an evolution of top-down racing games like Grand Track 10, but with visual and audio improvements. These machines helped solidify the racing subgenre in arcades and made controls such as steering wheels and pedals desirable standards. Today they appear frequently in collections, and many were cloned or emulated in preservation systems. Galician, released by Namco in 1979, refined the space shooter by introducing colorful enemies that attacked in formations and dived in aggressive patterns, an aesthetic and AI evolution compared to earlier shooters. Controlled with a joystick and fire button, Galician was an important step in the transition to more colorful graphics and enemies with complex behavior. It was a direct precursor to games like Galaga. A representative title of the late 1970s arcade era, Galician appears in collections and is preserved via emulation. Original machines are appreciated by collectors. Asteroids revolutionized space shooters with its vector graphics and inertial movement mechanics. The player controlled a small triangular ship using buttons to rotate, thrust, and shoot, navigating asteroid fields that shattered into smaller fragments upon impact. From time to time, flying saucers appeared on the screen, firing fast and unpredictable shots, adding tension and excitement to the gameplay. Smooth controls demanded precision, momentum management, and strategic awareness to survive. Original arcade machines can be worth between $3,000 and $6,000 US. Pac-Man was created by Toru Iwatani at Namco and released in 1980. The idea of a charismatic character that eats dots in a maze was deliberately designed to attract audiences beyond traditional male players, such as women and families. Pac-Man introduced distinct characters, the four ghosts with varied behaviors, and power-ups that temporarily changed gameplay dynamics, generating strategies within the maze. Commercially, Pac-Man became one of the greatest phenomena of the arcade era. Hundreds of thousands of units sold, billions in coin revenue, and a gigantic cultural impact: music, toys, TV series, and more. Today, Pac-Man is recognized as one of the pop culture symbols of video games. The number of cabinets installed and revenue generated are frequently cited in historical studies of the medium. Missile Command was designed by Dave Tyre and released by Atari in 1980. The game placed the player in charge of defending cities under missile attack, introducing a sense of urgency and the need to prioritize targets. The original interface used a trackball or rotary controls to position and launch interceptors, a design choice that reinforced the sense of aiming and precision. Beyond its arcade success, the nuclear theme and tense atmosphere made the title a cultural reference of the early 1980s. Original cabinets in good condition are sought after by collectors. Donkey Kong was Nintendo's first major platform success, created by Shigeru Miyamoto and released in 1981. The game introduced a simple narrative. A protagonist, Jumpman, later renamed Mario, must rescue a damsel while climbing structures and avoiding obstacles, along with vertical platforming elements that made gameplay innovative for its time. Controls, joystick and jump button. The combination of challenging levels and character design marked Nintendo's transition to a central role in the game industry. Today, Donkey Kong is considered gaming heritage, Original cartridges and cabinets are valuable collectibles. Frogger, from Konami, launched in 1981 with gameplay focused on crossing dangerous environments, streets, rivers, with multiple moving obstacles and a time limit. The simple directional movement and fast-paced rhythm made Frogger instantly recognizable. The challenge came from combining timing and pattern observation of traffic floaters. Frogger was ported to numerous platforms and remains present in collections. Original cabinets and boards are found in museums and auctions. Pole Position, released by Namco in 1982, changed the racing genre by introducing a more realistic track perspective and lap timing, starting with a qualifying lap before the race. The use of steering wheel, pedals, and a cabinet layout simulating a cockpit brought the experience closer to real racing. The title became a standard in arcades due to its immersive feel and control precision. Cabinet replicas and pole position boards are items of interest for collectors and game museums. Dig Dug offered creative gameplay based on digging tunnels and inflating enemies until they exploded. The design combined tactical action with path drawing, digging, and tool use, the pump. The unique gameplay and cartoony design made the game an immediate hit, and it was widely ported and referenced in later titles. Machines and boards are common in game preservation collections. Dragon's Lair was groundbreaking for using Laserdisc to display high-quality animations developed by professional animators, including Don Bluth. Instead of traditional sprites, players watched animated sequences and made quick inputs at specific moments, an experience closer to an interactive cartoon with branching paths. The technical innovation raised production and installation costs, but left an indelible mark by showing distinct narrative and visual possibilities in arcades. Today, original machines are rare and valuable collector's items. The game has also been widely preserved through Laserdisc emulation. Tetris was created by Alexei Pajitnov in 1984 in the Soviet Union. The commercial arcade version emerged later through various companies that licensed or ported the game. The mechanic of fitting blocks, tetrominoes, to complete lines became one of the most universal and addictive concepts in video games, generating thousands of ports and adaptations. In the arcade world, there were dedicated versions and electronic machines inspired by it. Tetris is now one of the most re-released and studied intellectual properties in game history. Gauntlet introduced the concept of a cooperative dungeon crawler in arcades, allowing up to 4 simultaneous players with distinct classes: warrior, valkyrie, wizard, elf, emphasizing survival against hordes of enemies and resource gathering. The design encouraged cooperation and brought microeconomy into matches, life counters, food resources, becoming very popular in arcades and setting standards for local co-op multiplayer. Cabinets and control panels are collectible. There are also numerous home versions and ports. Gradius was a side-scrolling shooter that introduced a configurable power-up system and weapon progression, along with smooth scrolling and highly polished level design, which influenced many subsequent shooters. The combination of rising difficulty, enemy patterns, and strategic power-ups made it a cult classic. Original boards and cabinets are often found in classic game collections. Outrun, 1986-1987, brought a racing experience with route choices, vibrant scenery, and a luxurious cabinet with steering wheel, gear shift, and pedals that emphasized the feeling of casual driving and freedom. The game prioritized stylized arcade racing with a memorable soundtrack and branching paths that increased replayability. It is a reference in 1980s arcade aesthetics. Well-preserved cabinets are sought after by collectors and enthusiasts. Double Dragon was a milestone of the beat-em-up genre, bringing local co-op to new levels with hand-to-hand combat, combos, and stage progression. Gameplay emphasized special moves, weapons, and environment interaction, and the formula influenced dozens of later titles. Double Dragon cabinets and its console ports helped popularize the genre for home audiences as well. Golden Axe featured a fantasy setting, playable characters with distinct magic abilities, and a darker tone than other beat-em-ups of the time. The combination of fighting, weapons, and magic, along with medieval fantasy-inspired settings, distinguished it in the market and cemented its position as an arcade classic. It is often collected alongside other Sega hits. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade, 1990, capitalized on the popularity of the animated series, offering up to 4-player co-op, accessible controls, and an experience that mixed frantic action with character fidelity. Controls with multiple buttons, punch, kick, special, and the licensed aesthetics drew crowds to arcades and helped sustain the local co-op model. Official cabinets are found at fairs and in pop culture fan collections. Street Fighter II revolutionized the fighting genre by standardizing special moves, combos, and a varied selection of characters with distinct fighting styles. The game transformed arcades into competitive arenas, fostered tournaments, and established the versus fighting format that dominates to this day. Original arcade boards and cabinets are central pieces in collections, and the title remains active in retro gaming and esports communities. Mortal Kombat brought digitized graphics and explicit violence to arcades, popularizing elements such as fatalities that generated great controversy and debates about video game content ratings. The photorealistic visuals and dark aesthetics helped differentiate the title and generate massive commercial and cultural impact, and also led to investigations and regulations on game content. Original machines are collectible and often displayed in video game history exhibits. Ridge Racer was one of the first 3D polygonal racing games to stand out in arcades, offering a sense of drifting, polygonal graphics, and a racing dynamic that approached competitive realism, a notable technical advance for early 1990s arcades. Public response paved the way for the 3D era in arcades and consoles, and Ridge Racer cabinets marked the sector's technological transition. Daytona USA raised the standard with more detailed 3D graphics, multiple machines networked for multiplayer races, and force feedback controls, becoming one of the most emblematic racing arcades of the decade. Gameplay centered on drifting and accessible handling one player's over an established cabinet and networking models that would be replicated. Today it is remembered as a 3D era classic in arcades. Virtua Fighter 2 represented a leap in 3D combat, with polygonal fluid animations and a more technical martial arts-based fighting system. Precise mechanics and realistic movement established the title as a reference for 3D fighting games. Virtua Fighter boards and cabinets are valued by technology and gaming collectors. Tekken 2 was an important evolution of the Tekken series, with greater character diversity, more complex combos, and refined 3D graphics. The focus on detailed animation and mechanics that were both accessible and deep helped keep the franchise as one of the most beloved in arcades and consoles. Original cabinets and boards are items of interest for fighting game collectors. The Street Fighter III series refined combat precision and hand-drawn frame-by-frame animations. Third Strike is particularly revered for its parry system and character balance, and although its arcade distribution varied by region, it established a competitive and tactical cult following among players. Original boards and arcade versions are highly valued items among classic fighting communities. Now let's explore how the main manufacturers emerged and what they are like today, highlighting their key achievements and the people who played pivotal roles in their histories. Atari, founded in 1972 by Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dabney, is perhaps the most emblematic of this era. Following the unexpected success of Pong, the company quickly became synonymous with video games in the United States. Bushnell, often called the father of the video game industry, managed to transform lab experiments into a global business, creating both arcades and home consoles such as the Atari 2600. In the 1980s, Atari earned billions of dollars but also faced the great 1983 crash, which nearly drove the company into bankruptcy. Even so, its cultural influence remained untouchable. On the other side of the world, in Japan, Namco was born in 1955 as a toy company called Nakamura Manufacturing Company, founded by Masaya Nakamura. Only later, in the 1970s, did the company dive into arcades, creating titles such as Galaxian, Galaga, and Pac-Man, which completely changed the perception of arcade games. Toru Iwatani, creator of Pac-Man, is one of the most important figures in the company's history, responsible for bringing to market not just a successful game but a cultural phenomenon that transcended generations. Namco remained active, merging with Bandai in 2005 to form Bandai Namco, an entertainment giant still going strong today. Another Japanese giant that revolutionized arcades was Taito, founded in 1953 by Michael Kogan, a Ukrainian-born businessman who became a naturalized Japanese citizen. Originally, the company worked with importing products, but eventually entered the arcade field and in 1978 released Space Invaders, developed by Tomohiro Nishikado. This title is considered by many to have inaugurated the golden age of arcades. Space Invaders was so popular that it caused a shortage of 100 yen coins in Japan. Taito remained relevant for decades and is now a subsidiary of Square Enix, still licensing classics and producing new content. Nintendo also enters the scene, though today it is better remembered for its home consoles. Founded in 1889 by Fusajiro Yamauchi as a manufacturer of Hanafuda playing cards, the company only entered the video game industry in the 1970s. In 1981, with Donkey Kong, created by the young Shigeru Miyamoto, Nintendo consolidated its presence in the arcade market. Just a few years later, the success of the Famicom (NES) would transform it into a leader in the home console market. Interestingly, Nintendo was already a century-old company when it became a protagonist in modern video games. Sega, founded in 1960 from the merger of companies that originally produced entertainment machines for American military bases in Japan, was also a pillar of this period. Known for innovating in racing cabinets and more immersive experiences, such as Outrun and Daytona USA, Sega played a key role in the transition to 3D polygonal games. In the 1980s and 1990s, it was one of Nintendo's greatest rivals, both in arcades and home consoles. We cannot forget Konami, founded in 1969 by Kazumasa Kazuki as a jukebox repair company, which quickly moved into electronic games. It created hits such as Frogger, Gradius, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Capcom, founded in 1979, was responsible for redefining fighting games with Street Fighter II and also consolidated the beat-em-up genre in arcades with Final Fight. Midway, an American company founded in 1958, shone especially in the 1990s, bringing Mortal Kombat and the cultural impact of its digitized graphics and explicit violence. When it comes to numbers, the revenues were impressive. Space Invaders, for example, generated over $2 billion in coin-operated arcade machines during its early years, while Pac-Man surpassed that mark, becoming one of the most profitable games in history. In 1982 alone, arcade revenue in the US exceeded $8 billion, surpassing the Hollywood film industry at the time. Today, many of these companies are still active, some transformed, others absorbed. Atari exists in a restructured version, focused on licensing and nostalgic projects. Namco became Bandai Namco. Taito is now under the Square Enix umbrella. Nintendo and Sega remain strong, with the former leading the console market and the latter still active in software. Capcom, Konami, and Bandai Namco are global gaming giants. Amid this evolution, Sony also emerged, entering the video game market in 1994 with the PlayStation, completely changing the industry. The console combined advanced 3D graphics, a CD-ROM-based architecture, and a powerful marketing strategy aimed at a more mature audience. Its success turned Sony into one of the industry's biggest forces, directly rivaling Nintendo and Sega, and marking the beginning of a new era in home gaming. Meanwhile, companies like Cinematronics and Nutting Associates disappeared but left their mark as pioneers. These stories show that video games were not born merely as entertainment, but as the result of the vision of engineers, entrepreneurs, and designers who believed that technology could become culture. For enthusiasts, learning about the roots of these manufacturers is like opening a living encyclopedia of electronic entertainment history. If you lived through that time, tell me in the comments which of these video games was your favorite. And if I forgot your favorite one, drop it down below. I might include it in a future update. If you enjoyed the video, share it with your friends to help the channel grow. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you won't miss the next ones.